Yes, here on Times Radio, we know that politicians don't always have all the answers, which is why every week we ask someone who's not a politician what they would do if they ruled the world. I'm delighted to be joined by TV royalty, Timmy Mallett. Welcome to Times Radio.
Well, a great pleasure. Thank you for having me, Matt. This is rather nice to be in charge of the entire planet.
Well, Timmy, we have met once before. You came to Taunton when I was a big fan of Wackerday, obviously, as a child. You came to Taunton when I was a student. We organised a student protest, and you came and you were the sort of the entertainment. And I introduced you live on stage.
So,
remember that? From
Taunton to the world. That's pretty
exactly
good. What were you protesting about?
Tuition fees.
Okay.
And then I ended up not going to university. But, I got to meet Timmy Mallett, so it was swings and roundabouts.
Oh, right, okay. Why didn't you go to university? Because of the tuition fees?
No, not really. I got a job at a local paper instead, which is what I always wanted to do. So I thought, well, why go to university? Although I was going to go to Warwick, which is where you went, wasn't it?
Yeah, I went to Warwick, and I enjoyed it there. But I also enjoyed my lovely day in Taunton. It's a top town.
Well, somebody stole one of your mallets, and I had to go and rescue it.
You see, you can't have that happening.
No.
I can just remember you running down the street chasing after.
That's what happened. Running through Taunton Town Centre trying to retrieve Pinky.
But you did.
Punky. I did. Yeah. That's very important. So, Timmy, we're putting you in charge of the world.
Thank you.
What big change would you like to make?
Well, a rather lovely thing to be in charge of the world. I wake up and look at the beautiful sunrise this morning and I'm thinking to myself, how can we celebrate the changing seasons and perhaps use our initiative to do something about energy. I know energy is the current flavour. Well, that's right. In that case, if I'm in charge of the world, that's what I'm going to look at. But I'm going to look at it slightly differently, I think. I'm going to ask some questions and see if there are any answers. Could you, for instance, use the changing seasons and the power of the Earth's rotation to generate power? I mean, i.e. gravity. I mean, is there a way of using that? So I'd ask the scientists to have a little think about it and to see if they could come up with something. Or maybe there's a way to harness the power of sleep, so that while we are asleep, they say, a good sleep and you recharge the batteries on your body. So is there a way of taking that power and making us more wide awake in the daytime? I mean, so just in terms of everything we use around us as opposed to just our physical bodies.
That's interesting. So the way that some people's watches charge up while they're waving them around, it could be while you're moving around in bed, asleep, or doing other things. Maybe your bed is charging up and harnessing that power.
Well, I often think about if you've got solar panels on your house, then your house is working for you. It's putting the effort in. And so is there a way to use something as natural as sleep or as the Earth's rotation, to give us something more than, a lovely new day?
And so what sort of leader did you think you'd be, Timmy? Are you a dictator, a delegator, hands-off, hands-on? Do you just come up with the big ideas and hand them over to other people, or are you going to be all in the nitty-gritty?
Well, I prefer just handing the ideas over. I like dream them up. I think being curiosity is a great thing. And the more curious we are, the more chance of coming up with something slightly different. Actually seeing these things through, that's the hard bit. And that can be quite tricky. So you need to have people around you who can say, right, this is how you turn that lovely idea into the practical thing. And often I find myself joining in conversations with people. Help me out here. I've got a little bit of an issue. How do I make this work? So, delegation, I think it's a lot easier.
So who are you delegating to? Who's in your team? And we'll let you have anyone. They can be dead or alive, real or fictional. But who's in Timmy Mallett's team?
Well, I'm going to start with one of my heroes from the 12th century, Eleanor of Aquitaine. Now, that's not what you expected to hear.
That was not what I was expecting, but I'm looking forward to it. Go on, explain why.
Okay, well, Eleanor was a giant striding the stage of the 12th century. She was the wife of Henry II, and also before that, the wife of the French king. So a queen twice over, ruler of Aquitaine, that's all of the southern part of France, and then ruler of France, ruler of England, ruler of pretty much most of Western Europe. She went on crusade. She could do deals. She had a bunch of children, at least two of whom became kings in her lifetime, Richard the Lionheart and King John. And she was a woman who, even when things went wrong, like she was imprisoned for 16 years by her husband, Henry II, she still fought for what was right. And she just had a determination. I think that business of being a powerful woman in a man's world is a real inspiration. And I think to myself, well, she's in my cabinet, definitely. She was active into her 80s. Didn't let disappointment or imprisonment knock her for six. So she's in there. So I've got Eleanor of Aquitaine. And then I'm going to have another historical figure. And this is somebody whose use of language is really key. And I love the Archbishop Thomas Cranmer. Wow! I love my historical figures, Matt.
You do.
Thomas Cranmer comes alive to me. He was the Archbishop when Henry VIII was on the throne, and Henry VIII was as we all know, was an arse, and he wanted to everything his own way. And Thomas Cranmer's job was to help the Reformation happen in England. And his job, in essence, was to write the rules. One of the rules, Henry VIII said, was priests can marry. So knowing that Henry VIII wasn't very good at marriages, he had 6 wives. When Thomas Cranmer got married, he did it rather secretly, and he kept his wife in a trunk when Henry came to call. I mean, that's using a little bit of tact, isn't it? Sorry, darling, King's coming to visit, better get in the trunk. But he wrote the prayer book that we use, that's in everyday language, earth to earth, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. And these sorts of phrases are still used today. And one of the things he said, which I really liked, was nothing that's ever been done or created by man, by people, has not, in the fullness of time, been corrupted, changed, or altered. And that tells me that everything we come up with today will, in due course, change. And that's the reason I'm going to have Cranmer in my cabinet.
Wow!
I'll have a couple of.
Duo.
I'll have a
Go
couple of newies too, of current people. I'll have Vladimir Zelensky. I'll have him in. He's good value. I mean, he's a comedian. First of all, a comedian who rises to that stature of having a go. Wow. Love that. And he sees with a comedian's clarity the pomposity of Putin. And he sees the hubris. And he says, no, hang on. There's a way of dealing with this. He's got the personal touch. He's got a clarity of purpose, a young family. And I think that can make him a man of action and to see and help things be clearer. So he's definitely in my cabinet. I'm going to put in... hang on, I've got more.
No, go on, that's fine. If you've got more,
I've got more.
Cabinet, we'll take that.
Yeah. No, this is a great cabinet. I'm going to have David Hockney, the artist.
Perfect.
Okay, now David Hockney is an artist who's been painting all his life, and every set of images he comes up with is always a challenge. He has a way of using his eyes to look at the world around him and to say, each season things change, and he paints it differently with a new perspective, even a new medium. He looks for the invention of new art.
A lot these days, isn't he, as well? Having moved from Yeah. Do you paint as well, don't you? I've seen
Of
some of your
course.
paintings.
Yeah, I do. I'm a passionate artist, Matt, and last year I cycled around the circumference of Britain. I did a circumnavigation of Britain with my paints, following in the footsteps of Joseph Turner, who 200 years ago found he couldn't go to Europe because of a dictator. Napoleon's got a lot to answer for. And so he went around looking for the sublime views of Britain and painted them and gave us an appreciation of our beautiful country, which is still apparent and still relevant today. And there's something about his achievement in what Hockney does. And he reminds me to look at things anew and freshly every day, to take things that we think are settled and to ask, can we change them? And that brings me to my final member of the cabinet, and that's a scientist to actually tell me whether these things are possible and they can be changed. And I'm going to call on my good pal, Professor Brian Cox.
Now, very good.
Brian is a mate of mine who I gave a job to when he was 17. He came along and did some jingles for me on my Piccadilly Radio evening pop show, and had an enthusiasm and an interest in everything. And since then we've kept in touch, and we have these discussions about, can things be changed? And the answer is absolutely. There is nothing at all in the world that cannot be changed or used or affected. So that's what I'm going to use.
Very good, very good. And because all political careers in the end in failure, to me, what's your vice? What's the thing that will bring you down and force you to resign?
Built-in obsolescence. There's no question at all that there is a time for everything and a season. You know that lovely phrase about there is a time for everything and a season. And you have your time in the sun and you have your time as ruler of the world. The Beatles always said that a successful pop band will never last more than 3 years. 5 if you're lucky. Well, of course, they did considerably more than that before they went their separate ways. But every generation has its own ideas. So the next generation, in due course, 3 years less, will come along and will say, you're old-fashioned, you're boring, you're the old guard, let's do it differently. So I'm quite happy with that fact that there's that phrase that it's my turn, I'm in charge. It means that there's a built-in obsolescence, and off you go, Mallet.
And somebody else will come along. Timmy, just finally, one thing I was just thinking, listening to you, talking about history and science and the environment and everything. I did a lot of that as a child, watching you on the telly, and I basically learnt lots of things, but really what I was waiting for was to watch people playing Mallet's Mallet. Do you think these days, because there's so much content, kids' TV, you were the only thing to watch on the TV at that time, so I watched it, and I also found out about what was happening in Moscow, or, something was happening in history or the environment. And these days, kids can sort of avoid all that. You could be watching rubbish the whole time. Do you think we've lost something with these sort of multi-channel world? I don't know, the idea of stumbling across something. I wouldn't have got my children to sit down and watch a mini documentary on what Moscow's really like. But when it's all wrapped up in Mallet's Mallet, we were learning stuff along the way. Do you think that kids' TV has suffered a bit because of that?
No, I don't think it's suffered. No, I think the question you're raising is from somebody who possibly doesn't watch a lot of kids' TV, Matt.
Well, not to be honest, they're a bit older now, so I can leave them to it. They can watch their own thing.
Yes, but then that your kids have a vast choice of things to watch. Yeah. Huge amounts of great programming to watch. Children's TV used to be wrapped up in mainstream TV. Is that a fair phrase? I don't actually like that word, mainstream. No, I think I'll change that. That's going to be one of the rules I'll bring in, a change of words that I don't like. No. So TV was, everybody could see it. But now, children's TV, you go off and find a dedicated children's channel. The idea being that it's always there for you. So, in other words, if you're not a child, then why would you be watching it? But Whack-A-Day, the Wide Awake Club, and other programs were on, so that everybody watched it because that was on. So that's why you're saying kids' TV's not the same.
I need to go and search that more. Yeah,
and you'll find it's great. There's lots of good quality programming and really fine producers doing good things and great presenters being interesting and sparky and setting us alive with their thoughts and jokes.
Funny, do you still get the mallet out occasionally?
Of course, absolutely. I shall be malleting in Mansfield next month, and I shall be having a good time with that. The mallet is always going to be part of who I am and what I do, but my love of art and history means that I go out and I'm passionate about my cycling and curious about the world around me and what there is to see, to capture in a painting, to engage with somebody in a conversation, and I absolutely adore that. Anyway, I'm really looking forward. When does my job start as ruling the world, Matt?
Well, you can start right now, but you might be ousted by next week because somebody else will come along. That's basically
That's
how it
fine.
works.
In that case, I'll have a week, and my cabinet
get on with it.
We'll have a great little conversation and we'll sow some seeds. And in the meantime, if you're looking at some of my artwork that I created, particularly on the cycling circumnavigation around Britain, you can have a look at malletspalette.co.uk. It's a good name, isn't it? That's my art website.
Perfect, great.
And
Timmy,
my
thank you
story.
So much. What a
hang
joy.
on.
What a joy
I haven't
to talk
finished.
to you. Go on.
And if you want to know more about what drives me, or the cycling, or the Whack-A-Day in my memoirs, you can read that in Utterly Brilliant My Life's Journey, which is a story of me cycling across Europe on a medieval pilgrimage to Santiago de Compostela. And that led me into thinking about my love of art and stories and Whack-A-Day and Itsy Bitsy and how they all come together. You'll enjoy that story, Matt. It'll be right up your street.
It is absolutely right up my street. Timmy, thank you so much. Timmy Mallett, thank you for joining us on Times Radio, telling us what you would do if you ruled the world.